Hello and welcome to TidyX episode 160. TidyX is a screencast where we go through and explain how our code works. My name's Ellis Hughes.
My name's Patrick Ward. Thanks for checking in at TidyX. We are on episode 160. We just finished talking about some package development stuff, and as we talked about in the last episode where we went over PositConf, we are going to get into some more shiny type of stuff. And as you can see, we are in the same place.
We are.
So
yeah.
that's kind of cool.
This is a unique episode. We don't do many of these
Yeah.
in-person episodes, so hopefully y'all will like this. Comment if you want us to do more of these.
Yeah, and like and subscribe on the YouTube channel if you want to get in touch with us.
Yeah. All right. So let's take you through a fun use of a shiny app that we thought of. So we've got this shiny app over here. Let's make us a little bit smaller. So we've got this shiny app here that Patrick threw together, and it's just looking at empty cars data, right? And we're just plotting MPGs versus displacement and weight versus the transmission here. But the cool thing that we wanted to show you, well, not the super cool thing, but we've got these drop downs here. So it's got transmission, 0 or 1, it changes. Look at that, isn't that beautiful and wonderful? But the cool thing that we've added in the shiny app is you actually have the ability here to go into the URL, which is probably not super clear for you all, but trust me. And if you do !sil equals 4 and go to there, it updates our shiny app so that it shows and updated the selection here in our dropdown to 4 cylinders. It reset the transmission to 0.
Mm-hmm.
You can also, let's show the people, you update it to 6. Refresh, changes cylinders to 6, 8, update cylinders to 8. Super cool way to have your shiny apps be updating automatically based on the URL that you're entering into it.
Yeah, and you could add the ampersand and also change the transmission. So let's say we wanted to automatically make it go to 1. So at first glance, you're probably looking at this saying, so what? What's the point? There is a highly relevant use case for this, and that's what caused me to throw this together, because I was building this for something else, and I thought maybe other people would be facing the same problem. At work, we have an in-house application, and people use that application for accessing data and information. And then we have a series of shiny apps that have other data and other context. And so one of the things was people were saying, hey, from the in-house application, can we click and go out to the shiny apps without having to specifically go to another URL, select the cylinders, for example, select the transmissions to get what we're looking for. So the idea was, okay, can we somehow click from an external application, click a link that allows us to pre-populate a shiny app by parsing a query string. So basically reading from our database, parsing the query string and saying, hey, all this stuff that takes place after the question mark, pre-populate that so we can go directly to the information this person wants. Mm-hmm. And so let's go through how this works.
Yeah, let's do that. And I think there's a lot of real value in this by setting it up so that it just, you don't have to do all this data entry when you open up a shiny app. How many times have you built up a shiny app, and when you're testing it out, you're like, okay, I got to type this information. Oh, I got to do this one. And then now I've got to add this information just to get to make sure that the plot that you updated is doing it right.
Exactly.
And so there's, I guess, potential for, the testing aspect as well, getting it to pre-populate those values.
Totally.
So let's go through, let's zoom in a little bit because it's both small for us and small for you, because now we're both sitting a little bit further back than we normally do, and talk through how this works. So I'll stop what was running here. So we've got our script here. We're loading up Shiny and Tidyverse for all our data manipulation needs, and Shiny for building out our Shiny app. We use some data preparation here just to kind of clean it up a little bit. We take the empty cars dataset, which is included in base R. You go row names to column, and we're going to set the row names from empty cars to a new column called car types. We're going to convert cylinders to be a factor, and we're going to convert AM, which is transmission, to be a factor as well. And then we're going to select to keep only car types, MPG, sil, AM, displacement, and weight. And then we're just going to, verify that everything looks as we want it to by taking the head of the dataset D, which we generated, just to verify that everything looks as we expect. One thing, so some people that went to the PositConf, this is a total aside, there was a question about what car does not exist in the empty cars data set. And I swore it was Ferrari.
Interesting.
I was confident that Ferrari was not included in empty cars.
I'm not a car person. I have no idea about cars. I don't even know where I'd start.
So
Well,
Ferrari
right
is
there at
listed
line
there.
30.
I did not remember that. I believe it was Mercedes. No, Mercedes
No,
is right
right
there.
yeah. A whole bunch of Mercedes.
There was the Hornet. I'm trying to remember. It might have been the shoot. I don't remember now.
Pontiac Vibe. It's not in there. I don't see that.
Yeah. So sorry. So sorry to my team that did the Posit Conf trivia with me because I was so confident that Ferrari was not in there. Anyway, that's an aside. Let's get into the actual Shiny app itself. So the Shiny app UI is relatively straightforward. We talked about Shiny UIs before. So we have our fluid page, which is defining the overall HTML of our Shiny app. We're setting the title to be cars. We've got our sidebar panel, which is that gray area on the left-hand side of our Shiny app, where we've got two inputs. Our first input is input ID sil. This does not have to match the input that we actually have. This is just the ID for us to use later. The label will be cylinders. The choices that people will have will be the sorted unique values of D cylinder. So that's going to be 4, 6, and 8. It's not going to start pre-selected, and you cannot select multiple. Same sort of idea here for AM. So AM, again, stands for transmission. So automatic or manual. Selecting the unique choices, which are 0 or 1. Not pre-populated, multiple false. And then we've got our main panel, which is now the right-hand side of our Shiny app. We've got 2 plots and a table. And the output IDs are XY plot, hist plot, and output ID TBL. So that's our UI. There's not a whole bunch of interesting, cool stuff. That's not what empowers us to do the query parsing off the URL. What happens here is this magic. Patrick, take us through the server. How does the server work here?
So here's the server, and as always, the server is a function. It takes an input and an output, and we also throw session in here because we're going to be updating things sort of as we go, or allowing the inputs, the user-defined inputs, to be updated. In specific, to be updated by the command line or the URL line. And that's really what's going on in this first chunk of the server. So we have the update based on the URL parameters. So we're using observe. It's kind of like an observe an event, observe something that's taking place type of thing. And so what we're observing here is that we're going to parse the query string based on so we have session and the client data. So this is the information based on this URL search. This is what we're trying to look for, right? And so it's basically parse this query string, and we're following this with a series of if statements. So if the query is null, so again, it's checking, it is not null, sorry, it's going to update the input based on whatever that query string has. So this is where Ellis would write in sil equals 6 and something would happen, or he'd write in AM equals 1 and it would automatically change. And so this is the if statement. So if this is not null, right? If that parameter is not null, do the thing. Otherwise, sit there and be a Shiny app and operate like a Shiny app and allow everything else to work just normal. So that's the observe event part, and that's where we need the session piece of the function. It's going to be reading back to the user interface. The rest of this Shiny app server is like any other Shiny app we've ever built. We get our data. So basically this says, hey, server, go ahead and take a look at the user-defined parameters, sil or am, and grab that information. And remember, again, sil and am are going to be defined by that chunk above. So it's either defined in the URL string or it's defined as a normal Shiny app where people click the drop-downs and it behaves normally because we have that if statement there. Once we get the data, we just create our outputs. So the first one is the XY plot. We're going to render the plot. Standard ggplot_fair. Remember, dat has to have the 2 little parentheses after it because this is going to be reactive. So it's always going to be changing. It's not a static data set. The ggplot here is going to just plot an XY of DISP to miles per gallon MPG. We're going to use a jitter plot. We saw that there. The dots are green. We add a little regression line in there. The color of the regression line is black. Theme light. We also make a hist plot. So we're going to, again, we're making our reactive data set. We're going to be plotting the, what does that say?
The weight.
Oh, the weight, yes. So there's a histogram plot of the weight. I'm sorry, a box plot. I think I started with a histogram plot and I said, oh, let's make it a box plot. That's why the X is a character vector of 1, so that we have just a box plot with no X value. And the theme is light. And then finally, the table, we're just going to use nothing fancy, no DT or GT table, just the standard render table. Throw the information in there and it's selecting out the car type so you could evaluate which car is not in the MT cars dataset if you wanted to. So that's basically how the server works. The only nifty part is that part up there where we're doing the observe and we're parsing that query string. Other than that, it's a basic server. And now Ellis has a few extra pieces here at the bottom that he felt would be useful for allowing this Shiny app to go. Ellis, why don't you take us through that?
Yeah, for sure. So there's the Shiny app. This is, again, standard Shiny fare for running your Shiny app. If we weren't assigning us out to Shiny query, we could just run this, and this would run the Shiny app because it creates the Shiny app object, and the print method for Shiny apps says, let's run the Shiny app. And so then it does that. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to add a little bit more information around it so that it was easier for us to reproduce and kind of demonstrate how things were functioning. And so that's where you use the run app function. So the run app function can accept a directory. So technically we could have just said, hey, the directory that we built the Shiny app in, or the file that we build it in, which is Shiny query, we could just pass that. But I kind of like the separation of these two thought processes here. Here we're building out the Shiny app object, and here we're actually going to run it. So we pass in the Shiny query here. There's a number of different arguments that you can write into run app, but for our case, to make it so that it's reproducible for us to demonstrate to you and that we can pre-populate with some potential URLs, is I wrote these options in here. So the first one that I set is port. And so this is the port of your computer that it's going to be running the Shiny app WebSocket to. So basically, when you're running a Shiny app, it's actually creating a connection between your browser and your R session, and it's sending information back and forth. That's how the R server works. And so it's sending HTML information out to port 888 on my computer. This is getting into networking stuff that I don't fully understand, but I know that I set the port, and you can set the port to be any number. I don't think there's a limit to numbers.
Four-digit number?
I think it can be more than 4 digits actually. But don't take my word on that one.
Yeah.
But you can. There are some reserved ports too. But if you're going to set 888, normally you don't have to set this. Again, this was just for reproducibility so that I could write down some URLs down here. The next one is host. So this is where's the Shiny app getting hosted by default, and therefore also the value that I entered in here. I'm going to be using 127.0.0.1, and that is my computer. That any computer that you're on, if you pass 127.0.0.1 on your own computer, that is a local host. That is your own computer that'll be running on. So I'm not giving away any information.
I believe if you ran line 104, just the Shiny app piece, not assigning it to the query, but if you ran that, doesn't it open up? I believe these values show up in your URL.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there it is.
You could go and do that, and then hey, look at that.
Like grab those values.
Yeah. New Shiny app popped up there at port 4768.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could do that. I don't know. I set this so that we could reproduce that. And then again, host. You could also use local host, but I just set the IPv4 IP address here. I think if you wanted to have it hosted somewhere else, you can set the host to be something else. But realistically, if you're building a Shiny app, you're probably hosting it for yourself anyway. If you're going to be doing more networking stuff, you should definitely read up into that a lot more than this very, very brief intro. And then we have launch browser equals true. And that is setting it so that it's automatically going to run it in the browser as opposed to running it over here in my RStudio application. Just because, again, we wanted to show you how the URL parsing worked, which we can only do in the browser. So let's show you how some of this would work. So we're going to spin up this Shiny app. Hey, look at that. It's running. It defaulted to 4 cylinders and the 0 transmission, which I don't remember what the tagging for automatic or manual, whether 0 is automatic or if it's manual. Not super important here. But you can see if you click on this link, because we've got the Shiny app running at port 888, on at host 127. I've now clicked on that, and that set it up to cylinders 40. That's default. That's not super interesting. But now if we click on that, it opens up a new one, sends it to cylinder 6, transmission 0. Click on this one where it's going to set it to be transmission 1, cylinders 8. It automatically is able to do that for us and set it up.
Changes all the other plots. So if we scroll down, we see our plots, we see our little table. So there's only 2 cars that met this condition. And obviously 2 dots. But yeah, as we change it, we get other bits of information.
Yeah, but it works just like a normal Shiny app. It's real nice.
Yeah, it behaves like a Shiny app.
And one thing that I really wanted to touch on is if you enter an invalid value, so like cylinders equals 24, it's going to enter garbage into the selection because it's not a valid option there. So that doesn't work. You could also, even if you type like what disp equals 25,
something
that's let's change sil back to like a valid value.
Right.
If you run that, the cylinders are going to be set correctly, but because we set up our observe to only care about if the query had sil or am, it's ignoring my disp entry in there.
Okay.
Let's just quickly throw a browser, just because I'm curious, and I'm sure folks have stuck with us for 16 minutes. They're curious as well. What does this look like? So let's run the app. So now we put a browser in our Shiny app, so it's stopping it running here. What does this query actually look like? So it's an empty list because it doesn't have any, I didn't mean to close that. Let's bring that back open. Let's open this again. But let's, if we type question mark sil4, we got to continue there. We've hit this browser again here. What does query come up with? So it says now sil is 4, just as we thought it should. Let's take a quick peek at what this looks like. So this is basically the query portion, because we have that question mark, that's why it's URL search, of our URL. And that's what's being dropped in here. Parse query string is going to parse this apart into the reasonable list that we get here. And so that's kind of how it all works. If you're curious what the underlying structures were of this, sorry, I went off script here.
No, that's good.
I was just curious what that looked like.
Yeah.
But this is in theory setting up for some more fun stuff that we can do down the line of connecting multiple Shiny apps together.
Yeah.
Right. That's kind of the idea of this. It's kind of cool to be able to enter this information via a URL query, like put that question mark in the URL there. But what we think is the value, what we're going to be building on next week, is having Shiny apps communicate back and forth with one another.
Yeah, and I think that's really, sometimes I'd get in, and I'd build a lot of Shiny apps. I'd get into like this situation where I'd build a Shiny app that I wanted to contain a lot of information. I wanted to have a lot of options for the user, and so there's tabs and things. Those things get, the servers get pretty big really fast, and also, the user experience starts to get degraded as they're pulling in more data, and the data's growing year by year, and it's just slow.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it might be easier to have a Shiny app that serves a specific purpose with a link out to other Shiny apps. And when you link out, you want to be able to pull the same maybe person or team or bit of information from that other Shiny app. So you want to be able to talk back and forth. And that's really the goal with this one. So, we're going to try and expand on this. Let us know in the comments section if, you have other questions or ideas maybe, or you're working on something at work and you're stuck with, how to get your Shiny apps to play together. And then we can cover that.
Yeah, definitely. Love to hear from you all what you think, what are common problems you come across, or what are ways that you might think to be using this sort of this querying technique for your own sort of work. So with that, I think we're going to call it. As always, thank you for joining us for 160 episodes of TidyX. As always, my name's Ellis Hughes. You can find me on various social media sites at Ellis_Hughes.
And my name's Patrick Gore. You can find me on Twitter or X at OSPPatrick. At tidy_explained is where we both are on X. tidy.explained@gmail.com, where you can hit us up on email. Easiest way to hit us up, though, YouTube channel, like and subscribe, drop the comments down below. As always, We appreciate you listening, and if you feel like we've in some way added value to your work, we do have a Patreon page, and we're grateful for anything that you'd like to donate.
Yes, thank you all so much, and keep on exploring your world.